Lore of the Old World, Forces of Fantasy, Chapter 4, The Kingdom of Bretonnia. The Bretonnians are a warlike and valiant people, who willingly seek out battle as a way of securing personal honour and pride. Any who invade their domain face the fury of powerful knights, exceptional warriors and guardians of a glorious nation, all feared and respected throughout the Old World. These armies march to war in the name of the Lady of the Lake, and for the glory of their king, sweeping aside evil on the field of battle. The kingdom of Bretonnia lies to the south and west of the empire, between the grey mountains and the Middle Sea. Here the gleaming white stone spires of Bretonnia's great cities rise towards the heavens in imitation of the ancient high elf towers that stretch along the nation's coast. Yet compared to the large and wealthy cities of the empire, these cities present a mere mask of cosmopolitan sophistication to the world, behind which lurks the truth, that the cities of Bretonnia are overcrowded and disease-ridden places, parochial, run-down, and impoverished. Beyond the whitewashed and crumbling walls of Bretonnia's cities, the feudal nature of the realm and the glaring differences between the nobility and peasantry become increasingly apparent. Throughout the land, the peasantry seemingly exist only to serve their masters, and those masters exist only to pursue the chivalric ideal of what a knight should be, to rule and to protect. Safe behind castle walls, the knights of Bretonnia dedicate their time to the feudal arts, hunting, jousting, and so forth, whilst their subjects toil to feed their lords and fill their coffers. Bretonnia's nobility enjoy their grand halls, hung with ancient tapestries, decorated with fine golden carvings, and filled with feasting knights and their noble families, whilst the peasants of Bretonnia live with large extended families in hovels gathered about the castle walls. So poor is the craft of these peasants, and so meagre the trade of the land, that the nobility must hire artisans from other parts of the Old World to build or maintain their keeps. The social order of Bretonnia is determined by a series of creeds and tenets laid down hundreds of years ago in the time of Gilles le Breton, and formally recorded by his son Louis. Each stratum of Bretonnian society rigidly adheres to their particular code. However, due to the antiquity of the original documents, much can be misconstrued by the opportunistic or the foolish. The lower orders of Bretonnian society, very few of who are literate, gather on the first day of each month to have their credo read to them by a squire of their lord, and be reminded of how privileged they are to serve a lord who serves as king, and of the duty they owe in exchange for such blessings. In reality, the peasants of Bretonnia live hand to mouth, toiling in the fields day in and day out in absolute destitute poverty. Most will not survive to see middle age, nor live to earn the thanks of their masters for the devotion they show. Yet without the produce of the peasants' labour, and the taxing of their meagre earnings, the knights could ill afford to live in the manner of which they are accustomed. The knights of Bretonnia themselves are given to routinely copying out their vows in painstakingly illuminated scripts that they treat with reverential care. The knights recite these vows before an image or token of the lady, which, depending on the knight's status, can range from a candlelit sketch to a gilded triptych. To break any aspect of their vows is the worst crime imaginable to these nobles, if narrow-minded, warriors. Bretonnian folklore is replete with the mighty feats of famous knights as they battle against the odds to defeat their evil foes and win the day in the name of the Lady of the Lake. In these stories and poems, noble knights seek out and slay ferocious dragons that terrorize the realms, battle and defeat evil warriors, and destroy hordes of orcs single-handed. Weaned from a young age on these stories of individual heroism and bravery, it is every knight's utmost desire to serve this goddess and live forever in her name. Since the days of Gilles le Breton, the Bretonnians have worshipped the Lady of the Lake as their goddess, a figure of myth and legend who guides their kings and protects their land from harm. It is said that she first appeared before Gilles and his knightly companions on the dawn of the great victory of Bordeloo. Wreathed in a fey light, the lady rose from the water, bearing a grail which overflowed with light that spilled into the waters of the lake and blessed the assembled knights until dawn's light broke over the mountains. Gilles famously dipped his bloodied and tattered banner into the radiant waters of the lake, crying, "Lady, bless my banner," only to lift it from the waters, magically restored, and bearing the image of the lady and her glittering grail. Gilles and his knights rode out and defeated the orcs that beset the land, then returned to the lake after the battle to give thanks to the lady for her blessing. And at this lake Gilles and his companions swore great oaths to serve the lady and remain together to free the land of Bretonnia from the monsters that assailed it. In the years that followed they went on to win many great victories, and since those days worship of the lady has spread throughout Bretonnia. The lady herself is very rarely seen, and only in the most verdant depths of the land may she be found by a few privileged and pure souls. Those who do find her are regarded as highly favoured and are themselves revered. Appearing as an ageless maiden of unearthly beauty, the lady will only appear to those who have faced great peril and are pure of heart. Many knights wishing to prove their valour declare that they will go on a grail quest and seek the Lady of the Lake to sup from her sacred chalice and become one of the legendary Grail Knights, warriors of unsurpassed skill who are incapable of malice and impure thought. Sacred groves and areas of mystical power are her dwelling places, and the Grail Knights are her protectors, devoting themselves to upholding her honour. No base creatures or evildoers can profane her sacred places, and this is a duty that every knight in Bretonnia, not just the Grail Knights, take very seriously indeed. The Bretonnian code of chivalry is inextricably linked with the Lady of the Lake, as it is she who rewards honour and virtue, and the supreme sign of a knight's favour is to receive her blessing. Throughout Bretonnia there are many Grail chapels built upon sites where the Lady is said to have been encountered. These range from humble roadside shrines where travellers and pilgrims pause to give thanks and make offerings, praying for swift and safe passage under the gaze of the goddess, to great cathedrals incorporated into lords' estates, where robed monks endlessly chant hymns and prayers in the naves and chapels, and walk the cloisters in silent prayer, ensuring the Lady hears naught but perpetual praise, and that her holy house be constantly maintained. It is the sacred duty of the Grail Knights to protect these shrines, and often such knights will devote the remainder of their lives to defending the Lady's shrine from defilement. These knights are known as Hermit Knights, and spend their lives defending the shrine and the relics housed within. The dukes that rule Bretonnia and the barons that serve them are all powerful and renowned warriors, for they could not retain their station were they not. Many of these mighty heroes are Grail Knights, having drunk from the Grail and become the epitome of chivalric knighthood, magically infused beings of near immortality from whom the radiance of the Lady of the Lake shines eternally. But there are many, certainly among the ranks of barons, who have never attained the station of Grail Knight, yet are in no way lesser heroes for that. Sometimes the responsibilities of governing may hold a knight back from embarking on their Grail quest, and, as heart-rending as this may be for the individual, it is a state of affairs borne stoically by many amongst the nobility of Bretonnia. Sometimes young children within Bretonnia are seen to have strange and mystical powers. Before they are grown, almost all such children will be visited by the Fey Enchantress, who takes them with her to the other world. In their absence, these children are mourned by their parents as if they were no longer living. Many of the girl children return to Bretonnia years later as damsels and prophetesses of the Lady, powerful individuals who, in their years away from Bretonnia, have honed and tempered their innate abilities, growing into powerful wizards under the tutelage of older handmaidens of the Lady. Riding into battle, they use their powers to lend protection to the noble warriors of Bretonnia, warding away foul enemy magics and casting down the foe with their own powerful spells. Amongst the ranks of peasantry that fight in the armies of Bretonnia, there are invariably men and women that display a natural aptitude for leadership and a degree of warrior prowess not normally associated with their station. Of course, such individuals cannot join the ranks of the knighthood, but the lords they serve invariably feel it only right and proper to reward and recognize the effort it must have taken for that peasant to elevate themselves above the level of their peers. So it is then that the peasant regiments that serve the lords of Bretonnia come to be led in battle by sergeants at arms. These officers not only lead with courage, but inspire their subordinates, their rank proof that a humble peasant can receive the recognition of the nobility. The Bretoni have always been renowned horsemen, and in turn their war horses are still believed to be the best in the Old World. Some old tales recount how the original bloodline had been strengthened with that of the northern war horses, breeding in their endurance and fiery temper. Others impart that the essence of Fey steeds pulses strong, deep within the inheritance of the modern-day warhorses. Whatever the cause, it is true that Bretonnian knights owe their success not only to their own valour and skill, but also to the endurance and temper of their steeds. So highly valued are these beasts that a royal decree of many centuries standing forbids the export of these magnificent animals. A Pegasus is stronger and faster than even the mightiest warhorse, easily able to crush a man's skull with its flailing hooves and cover great distances swiftly. Indeed, in the more wild and inaccessible domains of Bretonnia, there is real merit to a steed that is not prone to becoming mired in mud or entangled in thorns. The purest of all Pegasus legend has it that these creatures are descended from Glorfiniel himself, the steed of Agilgar, first Duke of Paravon, and Grail companion of Gilles le Breton. Noble and proud, these creatures are amongst the most intelligent of beasts. These noble, fortunate to own a royal Pegasus, treat it with the greatest respect, often charging the young knights errant in their retinue with its care, rather than risk the stench of a peasant offending the creature. The majority of Bretonnia's knightly class consist of minor nobles belonging to the extended family of a baron or duke. These knights proudly display the colours and motifs of their lord's heraldry, often further embellished with personal devices, identifying them as belonging to a single extended family, whilst declaring their individualism and their own stature as nobles. In Bretonnia, tradesmen, scholars and merchants occupy an awkward position in the social hierarchy. Not quite peasants, but by no means noble, the sons and daughters of such families will frequently enter the service of a knight as their squire, hoping to elevate their status. Squires maintain their master's panoply of war, supervise their estates, and in times of war accompany them onto the battlefield, protecting them from the harassment of the enemy's light troops. Each midsummer, commoners flock to their lord's castle to present their children in the hope that they will be trained as men-at-arms. For a peasant to have a child accepted into the ranks of a noble household is a great honour. Successful candidates are paid a seemingly generous wage, though they actually receive only a mere fraction of this, if indeed they receive anything at all. Every conceivable expense is deducted from this salary, from equipment and uniform to food and accommodation. Most must even pay a levy towards the cost of any future funeral expenses incurred. In times of war, these regiments, poor though they are, accompany their employers, their numbers swelling the ranks and providing vital infantry support for the knights. When the call to war comes, every peasant able to fight must serve in the armies of Bretonnia, a willingness reinforced by the promised bounty of a copper coin for any who survive the campaign. Though a few are pressed into service alongside the standing companies of men-at-arms, most are employed as levies of longbowmen, and are expected to engage enemies unworthy of a knight's attention from afar. Unlike men-at-arms, peasant bowmen are responsible for providing their own equipment. Thus their longbows will often be their own possessions, handed down from parent to child, and accordingly can be of variable quality. To make their numbers count, these longbowmen congregate into massed units in the battlefield, directing volley after volley into the enemy. Wherever the Grail Knights travel, they gather a procession of fanatical worshippers whose only goal in life is to bask in the reflected glory of these mighty individuals. Driven by relentless obsession, these pilgrims collect anything that a Grail Knight casts away, whether it be scraps of ruined armour, clothing, or even discarded food. Such is their burning passion, these religious scavengers will follow their idols through all weathers and lands, exulting in their acts and praising their words. Many bands of pilgrims construct a sacred reliquary, a gaudy melange of discarded trinkets, with the corpse of a departed knight resting at its centre. The pilgrims devote themselves to this construction, supplicating themselves before it as if it were a living Grail Knight, praying for their blessings. Knights errants are the youthful sons and daughters of Bretonnia's noble class, bold young warriors that have yet to earn their spurs and attain the rank of knight. By the chivalric code, a young knight's worth can only be proven in combat. Thus knights errants take to the field of battle. Full of bravado and hot-headed impetuosity, they charge boldly into the fray, heedless of danger, to earn either great honour or a memorable death. Once a knight-errant has proven worthy of their station, they are confirmed as a Knight of the Realm. Knights of the Realm make up the bulk of Bretonnia's nobility and its armed might, and they command great respect for both their station and the deeds performed to attain it. Since the days of Gilles le Breton, the Grail has been the ultimate symbol of Bretonnian chivalry, and the ultimate goal of any true knight. When a knight takes up the Grail quest, they relinquish all worldly possessions and all ties to their home, setting aside their lance and their vows until their quest is complete. The following months and years of the knight's life are filled with trials and hardships that strengthen the mind, body, and soul. Driven by visions, a knight may travel for countless leagues far from their home and beyond the borders of Bretonnia itself. Yet when the armies of Bretonnia march to war, wandering questing knights join their ranks, banding together into ad hoc regiments to face Bretonnia's enemies and further their quest. Only when a questing knight has proved their worth does the Lady of Lake appear to them, proffering forth the Grail and permitting them to drink of the blessed water held within this most sacred chalice. Those who drink from the Grail are changed forever. They exude an aura of power and purity. Their physical prowess grows by an order of magnitude. They are granted lifespans many times that of normal men, as well as other stranger and more ethereal gifts. From that moment on, the knight is committed to the service of the Lady in the Grail, a bond that can only be broken by death. Thus, whilst many Grail knights return to their home, others commit themselves to the solidarity and pious life of a hermit knight. Whilst Pegasus knights are present in the retinues of most dukes and barons, the great majority hail from around the mountainous borders of Bretonnia, where the gentle hills rise steeply to meet the grey mountains, and where many of these noble mounts can be found. Their numbers are made up almost exclusively of knights of the realm, but only the richest and most influential knights can boast of owning a battle-trained Pegasus, for the creatures are difficult to capture and harder still to train. Accordingly, to own such a beast is the ultimate symbol of wealth and success for their owners. But in truth, the Pegasus is also a great practical boon for any knight fortunate enough to acquire one. As they hold such privileged positions as head jailers and militia sergeants, to become a yeoman is the highest rank to which a peasant can aspire. It takes many years of dedicated service for a man-at-arms to be so promoted, and even then only an act of bravery on the battlefield will guarantee such a lofty ascension. Though no peasant may ride the steeds of the Bretonnian lords, favoured yeomen are permitted to ride to battle on draft horses. Such troops will often scout ahead of the main army and keep their lords informed of enemy movements. This is a dangerous task, and one which earns no honour, so it is a task that the nobility believe is best performed by peasants. Ferocious and wild, hippogriffs inhabit the upper reaches of the Grey Mountains, occasionally prowling the green lands below for stray sheep and cattle. They are fierce beasts, and will fight to the death against any creature that strays into their territory, whether it be a lost peasant or roaming dragon. Only the most committed can ride one of these beasts, for hippogriffs are strong-willed and ill-tempered, more than willing to fling their rider from the saddle should they prove lax upon the reins. To successfully train a hippogriff, the animal must be captured and broken at a very young age, but given the relentless territorialism of adult hippogriffs, acquiring a chick or an egg can prove to be a very dangerous proposition indeed. A trebuchet is an immense wood-built siege engine greatly favoured by the armies of Bretonnia. Through a series of levers, cogs and winding mechanisms, the large arm with its huge stone counterweight is drawn down into a firing position. A large sling is attached to the arm of the trebuchet that can hold rocks, masonry or even dead cattle. When the trebuchet is fired, the extra impetus that the sling adds to the firing arm means that it can fire further and with more power than a regular catapult. Such is the size of a trebuchet, and so essential is it to Bretonnian warfare, that smaller versions of these machines, known as field trebuchets, are sometimes deployed on the field of battle. Sacred items are of great significance to the people of Bretonnia, and many such artifacts are carried into battle by its knights. Most of these artifacts have been wielded for decades, if not centuries, by past heroes, and often it is the valorous actions of these past heroes that grants the artifact its significance. A sword swung by a brave knight to slay a dragon, a shield that miraculously turned aside the blows of a mighty enemy, even a trinket borne by a damsel whose blessed magic vanquished an evil necromancer. All these humble objects and more have become legendary through the deeds of their past owners, and, perhaps due to the zealous faith of the Bretonnians, have come to be viewed as magical artifacts.